everybody. You caught a little bit of that pre-conversation conversation. What's up? This is Natalie Bencivenga, and of course, I'm with
Desmond
my wonderful
Price.
friend, Desmond Price. Yes. And, you know, we've kind of gotten into this great little habit of hanging out together on Friday afternoons and really just talking about what's going on. I mean, what's been on your mind? I got some thoughts, but like anything in particular that just has been floating around in your brain that you're looking forward to talking about today?
Well, you know, there's a lot of different things that we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about Katy Perry's trip to space, how we feel about it. We're going to be talking about how AOC is skyrocketing up into the polls right now for the 2028 primary. You know, a little far out, but I think it's worth talking about why this is happening. Obviously, Lisa Murkowski, the senator from Alaska, Republican senator from Alaska, coming out and talking about how she is afraid of Donald Trump. And then also rounding off talking about RFK Jr. and his heinous comments about autism. So we want to talk about all of these things. Natalie, what do you want to start off with, though?
Yeah, I definitely want to start off with some girl boss energy because I'm really looking forward to this conversation. And if anybody has thoughts while we are chatting about any of this, or if there's topics that we're not talking about that you'd like us to bring into the mix, feel free to put them in the chat. And I think last time, Desmond, I was able to see the chat, so I will handle going through that again. But, you know, everybody has been giving their 2 cents this week around the Blue Origin space flight that took place 5, I believe, or was it 6? There were several women that went up. Yeah, several women. We're going to keep it appropriately vague, like my old editor used to tell me. It's Friday, guys. They went up into space. I believe it was 62 miles. They were weightless for a few minutes, and then they descended to a whole heap of criticism. And rightly so. I had such issues with all of this, Desmond, from start to finish. And we'll get into specifics and angles around, you know, the different parts of this, because I do think that there were some people on that flight that did deserve to be there. There were actual scientists aboard that ship. But, you know, when we're talking about pop star Katy Perry, when we're talking about CBS presenter Gayle King, and when we're talking about her claim to fame being Jeff Bezos' fiance, Lauren Sanchez, it really was giving me Marie Antoinette vibes. It was giving me Let Them Eat Cake. It was giving me Hunger Games from the inner city. It was just
Let them eat space.
Let them eat space. Yes, it was just all over this faux feminism energy and this idea that Katy Perry had to go into space to say that she felt connected to love. That just sent me. It sent me. I was just so disgusted by the display of wealth, the gratuitous display of wealth, and also this idea that they were doing something for womankind. And I think that's what really set off a lot of people. And I know I'm kicking off this conversation as the resident female as a part of our duo, but you are still allowed to have an opinion. I will grant you the space for the opinion. You've been granted. So what were your initial reactions to this?
You know, it does not really echo feminism to me, you know, personally, but like, again, like, what do I know as a man? But like, I guess for me, when I think about empowering women and, you know, having them be in places they haven't been in before, it would kind of mean more if it was a bunch of, you know, scientists, like, as you were saying, scientists, you know, who are in NASA or have been training their whole lives, and then maybe Bezos, you know, took them up there. But I think the fact that they, you know, felt the need to send celebrities up there, you know, people like, you know, Gayle King and like Katy Perry, it felt so kind of forced and fake. It felt more like an attention grab for Bezos in a time where billionaires are being attacked, in a time where we are coming after the exorbitant wealth that they had. It almost just felt like a PR moment to kind of like have a nice packaging around Jeff Bezos. Look at what Jeff Bezos is doing. Look at Jeff Bezos empowering these women. You know, it kind of was giving off that vibe. And it just feels really fake to me, really forced to me. And I think it's just all the wrong like signals of what you're trying to actually do for the feminist movement. It kind of just like, it creates this just fakeness around what is actually a really important topic, a really important issue, and a struggle that women are facing trying to find equality in society. So it feels like it almost like puts a damper on all in the entire, like, I guess, movement, so to speak.
Well, I think it really brought into focus class. right?
Yeah.
Because you had a racially diverse group of women going into space. And so on the very, very surface of this, one could argue, oh, but look, it's very intersectional. Look at all of these different types of women that are going into space. No, that's not what intersectional feminism is, right? Intersectional feminism focuses on centering and uplifting the most vulnerable self-identified women and girls among us so that all of us do well. This in no way was centering the most vulnerable women. All this was Girlboss cosplay, right? Where it was a bunch of uber wealthy women showing off their privilege and their need for attention around this idea of womanhood. While at this very moment, women are actually fighting for their lives here in the United States, let alone around the world. And so it really, to me, it was almost like a slap in the face. And what bothered me most of all was the lack of accountability that they've taken since the backlash. Apparently, Katy Perry's in a fetal position, crying herself to sleep over this. And Gayle King has been very outspoken about they didn't get it. You know, she said at one point, Jeff Bezos, every time we go up on these missions, they're gathering information, and what they're bringing back are ways to take our trash and put it in space. He's trying to clean up our planet. This is the dude that owns Amazon, one of the biggest culprits of the climate crisis, one of the biggest producers and distributors of single-use plastics, one of the biggest culprits of climate emissions. And she's going to try to say that this was a climate positive experience. How much CO2 was released into the air and toxins when they took off into space? Desmond, it was astounding to me.
I mean, there's two things here. One, would you need to go into space to clean up the trash if he wasn't creating so much of the trash in the first place? But secondly, just, you know, for clarity's sake, what is this fake girl boss energy? Like you are very you are very anti girl boss. What exactly is it for maybe people who don't know?
Thank you, because I understand I throw the term around in a very snarky sort of way.
Yeah.
I'm a boss. I'm not a girl boss. Okay. I don't understand why we need to have this differentiator, and it's always girl. It's never woman. So it's very infantilizing and it's diminishing. It's demeaning. And also it's a white feminism word, in my opinion. It's this idea around girl boss is equating to capitalist dream. And for me, it really hits home this idea that first of all, we're separated from the real bosses. We're girl bosses. You know, there's a different connotation there altogether. And it also, for where we are in the world right now, women have always been the boss. We've always been the boss of ourselves, our own identities, and our futures, our families, our jobs. But we are only seen in this specific context around how we're allowed to frame it, which is in a way that diminishes our intrinsic value. And so when I make fun of the idea of girl boss, what I'm really making fun of is the idea that we have to be separated from owning our own power so that it is infantilized and also commodified. So it reduces its impact. So that's what I'm referring to.
No, that makes perfect sense to me. And I can definitely tell that, like, when you're trying to achieve something, you know, stronger, the last thing you want to do is see people kind of, I guess, misinterpret the ideals of the movement or the goals of the movement.
Yeah. And what's always so interesting to me, and I read this a long time ago, every time you want to kill a movement, you commodify it. And so that's what we did with Black Lives Matter. That's what we've done with the Me Too movement. And that's what we're doing with feminism now at this point. If you walk into Target and you can buy a shirt that says girl boss on it, the movement's dead. You've killed it. And that's what they do. And so in my mind, we're trying to break down these systems that create these hierarchical structures where only 6 women, I double checked, it was 6 women can fly into space because they can afford $150,000 plus reserved ticket to go to space for 4 minutes. And this person says, Roz says, women have been in space since 1963. That's right. The first American woman astronaut and physicist was Sally Ride. Thank you. Once again, bringing it back to, there is history here. There is context here that is being negated because Lauren Sanchez thought it would be really great to get Monzi to design these fashionable functional suits that they were considering putting corsets in to fly to space.
Oh my God. So okay, that's amazing. But also, wait, did you say that it cost $150,000 for them to go to space?
No, it was just the down payment. They actually didn't disclose the full amount. So some people are saying it could have cost anywhere between 200 to 450, and one person had auctioned off a seat for 28 million. So no one actually knows how much they paid. There are even rumors that none of them paid anything because they were really trying to push this as a PR stunt. Right. But I don't know.
Well, I was about to say, I was like, Bezos, you're charging people? You're
of course he's charging people.
One of the richest people in the world. What are you talking about? He probably had an Amazon logo on the rocket.
But you know, when we look at all of this from the 30,000 view, bringing the pun in, being up in space, right? Yeah. I think it is really interesting to see who are the women who are actually striving for equity and equality right here on Earth, and who are the ones that are cosplaying. And I think very much those women, for the most part, outside of maybe the scientists that were on board and the human rights activists on board, the rest of them were cosplaying. And one of the women that I think has been trying to really push the idea of equity and equality, for better, for worse.
Nice segue.
Thank you, because everyone is flawed, but I do think AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and I like to say her full name because she deserves to have her full name said. She's actually doing things. I had the chance to watch her and Bernie at one of their rallies on Instagram Live the other night. I was truly blown away by the amount of people. It was in Folsom, California, by the messaging, the collectiveness. And now the people are really saying that she's kind of positioned to run perhaps in 28. What did you think of all of this?
Right. I actually wanted to pull that up while we have that here. So Nate Silver, obviously well-known pollster, somebody who is constantly in the news when it comes to around election time, election matters, saying that he's predicting that AOC will likely be the Democratic nominee for president in 2028. And then this is also on the backs of a Yale poll that was done recently. This was actually done in the last week, pretty sizable poll, over 4,000 people. And it had Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez number 2 in the field, right behind Kamala Harris, who is at 28%, AOC at 21%. And there's a bunch of just the usual suspects below: Pete Buttigieg, Gavin Newsom, Josh Shapiro, Gretchen Whitmer. So her numbers were, the last time this polling was done, her numbers were somewhere in the single digits. And now they've jumped up to about 21% in this latest poll. The Fight the Oligarchy tour, for however people feel about it, it is definitely putting a huge spotlight on her. She is being essentially positioned, I think, very accurately. I think no one can really deny this, as the next person to take on Bernie's movement. I think he's very much positioning her that way. He wants everyone to think of her that way. Yeah. And she has, created a star for herself outside of him over the last 7 years since she got into office. And it's only, I think, increasing now because people are seeing that the messaging that they have been on for years and years, it means so much more now, given the Trump administration and how they are going about systematically uprooting every norm in our life. Yeah. And so, I think, we saw other polling come out recently about what direction does the Democratic Party want to go in, whether you want to be more progressive, stay where you're at, or be more moderate. And now over 50% are saying they want to be more progressive. So the party is actually shifting to the left. And this has a variety of reasons for it. The mainstream Democrats' kind of ineffectiveness right now, their lack of wanting to do things, they're starting to get it. Like they really, they're starting to get it. And I think that they're almost in damage control right now. I really loved what what Senator Van Hollen did this weekend. Yes. Going down to El Salvador, that was a really big deal. I feel like those kinds of gestures have been needed the last few months, and we just haven't really been seeing it until just the last couple of weeks, really, where it feels Democrats are understanding. But unfortunately for them, they kind of are coming into the game a little bit late, and figures like Bernie, like AOC, have been able to take up a lot of space in conversations over the first few months of the Trump regime. And now people are seeing them as the de facto leaders of the party.
Yeah.
And I am extremely happy about this. Natalie, what are your feelings about all this? Like, where do you think AOC kind of goes from here?
Yeah, really quickly before I do that, I just wanted to make a small correction that the astronaut Sally Ride was in space in 1983. And thank you for that, because I was like 63 felt a little early. But yes, in terms of what you're talking about, I have been saying this for years. You and I have had conversations offline about this. I think AOC very much is the face of the new Democratic Party. Whether you love her, like her, dislike her, whatever, she makes sense. She makes sense. And she's moving in the right direction as to where the party should be, which is an actual moderate left party, because we've moved so far right.
Yeah.
We don't even realize how moderate really these people like Bernie and AOC really are, right? They're just like, can we have healthcare? Can we have a living wage? Like, these are not outrageous demands, and a lot of other countries have them.
No.
But when it comes to how I feel as opposed to what I think is going to happen, unfortunately, I think the girl boss energy could harm her in this way, because there are a lot of people, and we've seen it now twice with both Hillary Clinton and Kamala Harris, both losing to this psychopath that we now have. It really concerns me, the idea of putting another woman and a woman of color against whatever tyrant they put up in 28. Can a woman beat the left? Or excuse me, can a woman beat someone from the right? Can a woman beat someone from this MAGA right? I want to say yes.
Can I speak on that one, actually?
Of course.
Yeah, I think that some of that is actually unfair to both of those candidates. And I want to make it very clear for a second here that I am not a fan of Hillary Clinton. But
really,
I just not even a little bit. But with that being said, I feel like the election that she lost in 2016, losing Wisconsin by 20,000 votes, losing Michigan by 11,000 votes, losing Pennsylvania by 40,000 votes. You know, I think sometimes when people see like who won, who lost, or they see like the electoral college numbers, you know, the details of the actual outcome get lost in these conversations.
Yes.
And Hillary Clinton in Michigan, for instance, losing by 11,000 votes in Michigan in 2016, there were over 80,000 ballots in Michigan where they left the top line blank, where they were so upset with their choices. They didn't even vote for an option on the president at all. And that's not even counting people who voted for Jill Stein or people who just didn't vote at all.
Right.
You know, so like there are, and again, you know, because to get to Kamala Harris's situation here specifically in a second, but there were so many instances where I felt like Hillary could have maybe, like if a couple different things had been done differently in her campaign, or if maybe people like took Trump more seriously and they weren't kind of like treating him as like a joke, because they're like, oh, he can't win. The media kept saying that over and over. He can't win. He can't win. He can't win. We saw afterwards that people didn't vote because they were assuming that he couldn't win. How much of that is actually on the media versus on Hillary Clinton as a candidate, right? So I think that when you go back and look at the evidence there, I don't know that Hillary Clinton, you know, like with a couple different things going her way, wouldn't have won that election. In the sense of Kamala Harris, I did my breakdown about this after the election was over. She inherited an amazingly awful situation. The internal polls for Joe Biden showed that he was planning on losing that election by over 400 electoral college votes. He was losing Minnesota, he was losing New Hampshire, he was losing New Mexico, he was losing New Jersey. These are supposed to be states where you are never touched in as a Democrat. He was losing them all. Kamala Harris was asked to go in there and clean up his mess. And then she was able to save—
in 100 days.
Right, and she was able to save all of those states. And then she was also able to keep all 7 of the swing states within 5 points or less. Like even though she lost them, she lost Michigan by like 80,000 votes. It really wasn't that much. So I think given the deficit she inherited and given the overall outcome, man, if you'd have just given her another 100 days, I think it would have been a very different election. Joe Biden doomed that election by staying in as long as he did. So I say all that to say this, Natalie. I think that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has a very good chance of being the next president of the United States, because she's not going to have the same systemic problems that the 2 women before her had.
Oh,
That's what I
Desmond.
think. I think.
She's going to have a whole other set of problems. Can I interject here?
Yeah, no, definitely.
She's fuckable.
Oh God. Oh God.
Dude,
Oh God.
like I have had this conversation with so many of my friends. I
Okay.
think the reason Hillary and Kamala could even have a chance here is because they were postmenopausal women.
Oh
They are
God.
the male gaze is a real thing here in a real way, and men have a real hard time with attractive women, and they have a real hard time with women who are of childbearing years.
Yeah.
What if she gets her period and causes a nuclear war? What, she's going to get pregnant, and then what? Who's going to take over while she's on maternity leave? Oh, she's too pretty to be president. She doesn't have a brain in her head. Like, I say all of this knowing it very intimately and understanding what ageism and sexism look like in a woman who is younger and attractive, because I've seen it happen with so many of my friends. I've experienced so much vitriol from men when you don't give them what you want, what they want. Yeah. And it always reverts back to, she's a whore, she's a slut, she's ugly, she's no good except for serving me in this way. So I think while I agree with you, let me preface this by saying, like, I agree that she has a great chance, and I agree she would be a great choice. But I think we're underestimating, and I don't want us to make this mistake for the third time. I think we're underestimating the level of vitriol that not only men have for women, but that women have for pretty women. And it's going to be a hard mountain for her to climb to win over the respect of other women in that way.
Well, I think,
and I know that's rough to hear.
I mean, I think I have some disagreements, but I think for the sake of time, I think we'll have to revisit this one another time. But listen, I think there's a lot more to say here. I really do. Yeah.
Yes. And, okay, we're moving on. I know some people are like saying, okay, and this person said Hillary's campaign wasn't run as effectively as it should be. No doubt that AOC can run a better campaign. And do we have any statistics to back this up? People are asking. And I know you had mentioned a little bit around AOC being able to.
I mean, I feel like, just to kind of keep it real quick, because I know we got to get to the other topics here. I just really feel as though, given the margins about how Hillary Clinton lost her election to Trump, the margin of how Kamala Harris lost her election to Donald Trump, the fact that Donald Trump is probably the most popular Republican that they could pull out of the woodwork, and no one's going to replace his popularity. So whoever comes next, after him, it's not going to pull the same numbers that he did. I just feel like the margins are so small that, somebody else and to be fair, Kamala Harris and Hillary Clinton weren't that popular amongst their own Democratic base. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez will be dramatically more popular with her own base than either of her two predecessors would be. So I do think that the overall scenario is just very more favorable for her. I'm not discounting anything you just said. I just think that if the margins were already that small, a difference in that matter could be the difference between bringing more people out to vote for her, and there'd be less people voting against her, so to speak. She also doesn't represent an establishment that people don't like. She'd be coming in as an outsider candidate. So I think there's enough things positioning for her that she'd make up the gaps that the other two women candidates had prior to her. But
I hope you're right. I mean, like I said, I really, I want this for her. I hope, and for, if not for her, someone like her. I just,
it's yes. Speaking of people who have lost hope.
Well, yes. Exactly.
Speaking of people who have lost hope.
Yes.
Republican Senator from Alaska, Lisa Murkowski, has said that she is afraid of Donald Trump. She came out, she was, speaking recently, said that she and many other people are afraid of Donald Trump, that they haven't been speaking out because they're afraid of the retaliation. And they don't really know what to do because they've never seen a moment like this before. And I have had so many ping-ponging thoughts about what was going through my head after I heard, the senator from Alaska say that. But I kind of wanted to start off with you, if you don't mind. Like,
Yeah.
what do you feel about that sentiment? And is it surprising to you to hear someone say that? Someone in Congress say that?
Yeah, I actually, when I heard her say that, I thought, wow, good, because the first step is acknowledging that there's a problem. And I think the reality is a lot of them on the right that are in Congress right now that are representing people and in the Senate, I also would put money on it that they are also feeling this way, but they're not brave enough to say it. And the reality is, you know, he is a bully. And we've also seen that the courts are bowing down to him, that, you know, the people that he's keeping in his inner circle have to play ball. And he clearly is holding something over people. I mean, I don't know what it is, but I do think there is probably a lot of threats happening behind closed doors. This is a very unstable individual and somebody that I think is trying to save his own skin. And the reality is, you know, we both have said this before, he tried to stay out of jail. That's why he ran again and it worked. And so he's going to do whatever he needs to do to hold on to his power and continue to consolidate it. But what's concerning to me is the lawmaker, and this is from Reuters, she not only said what she said about being afraid, but that she also talked about the cuts for Medicaid, the proposed cuts, as unlawful. She said, I'm going to use my voice to the best of my ability. I've got to figure out how to do my best to help so many that are anxious and afraid, and that she would oppose sweeping cuts to Medicaid healthcare programs for low-income Americans. And so I say all of this to say it's good to be acknowledging that you're afraid and also stand against Trump. And I think hopefully she can be an example to other people in the Republican Party, because I haven't lost hope yet that we can turn this ship around, but it's going to take more people like Murkowski being really honest about how they're feeling and being open enough to say it. Because actually, I think you're more protected saying it than not saying it, because if you say it and then he retaliates, it's very clear, and it's another sort of thing we can go after with him. So that's kind of where my head's at with it.
I think the dam is almost like closing around him already, which is shocking to see. But seeing these town halls happening in the Republican districts, the Republicans are actually willing to go have town halls with their constituents, seeing all the videos of them being yelled at, people talking about what's happening with Elon Musk and with Doge, people talking about Medicaid cuts, cuts to the VA. You know, people are upset with their Republican representatives in a way that haven't really seen too much recently. Usually voters for the Republican Party are very loyal to their Republican representatives. You don't really see the same kind of vitriol and pushback that you see with Democratic voters against Democratic politicians. So I am very encouraged to see Republicans kind of speaking up. Like, I'm not trying to absolve them of anything that they've done in the past, going with Donald Trump or the votes that they have taken or the times where they have stood on his side. But I think the ends, you know, I guess, like, since we're all kind of trying to get to the same place, if Republican politicians coming out against Donald Trump weakens his position, weakens his credibility, weakens his quote unquote mandate, then I'm all here for it, because it puts him in a position where he feels like he has to pull himself back. And I think at the end of the day, how many I mean, no exaggeration, how many lives are actually going to be saved if Donald Trump is curtailed in any sort of way, you know? So I think it's incredibly important that more Republicans, I guess, like, if they don't want to do it, at least if they are pressured to do it, if they are pressured through the sake of maybe they feel they're going to lose their own seat. Someone like a Lisa Murkowski up in Alaska with ranked choice voting, she's not safe in that state. You know, so I'm glad that she's feeling the heat a little bit. I hope that more of these representatives, more senators also end up feeling the heat, because we need Trump's power to be attacked at all sides, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. And if you're just joining us, I'm Natalie Bencivenga, and I'm here with Desmond Price from Independent Thought. And this person, independent voter, said men on the right won't admit if they're afraid. And you know, I think part of that could be true, especially some of these older Republicans that are in power. But I do think, once again, it's monkey see, monkey do. And if you see enough people sort of opening up and it's working and they're getting positive praise and they're getting positive feedback from the media, I do think that it could open the door at least for that. And
we saw that with Joe Biden getting forced to resign, essentially. Yeah.
Yes, we did. Absolutely. And I know we're running a little late here, but I just wanted to get to one more story that really bothered me this week. And I'm looking down because I want to pull up the right thing here, but I'm looking at the Economic Times, and this says RFK Jr. mocked and blasted as unfit after bizarre autism comment suggesting older people don't have the condition. RFK Jr. has been criticized for making strange and incorrect statements about autism in a recent press conference. The Secretary of Health and Human Services asked why autism seems to only impact youngsters, which I don't even know why a journalist worth their salt would ask that, because that's not even accurate. And incited anger among medical professionals, autism lobbyists, and social media users. RFK provoked this outrage by criticizing the invisibility of autistic older adults, suggesting that autism is a recent phenomenon. I can't tell you the level of disgust I have for this person.
You can, though. You can.
I can,
the
and
floor is open. Yes.
I will. He is a true monster. He is unqualified, unfit, and an evil person. This is also a man, just personally, that's had a lot of issues in his romantic relationships. One woman ended up, dying by suicide, accusing him of being a sexual deviant. This is a bad guy in general. And what bothers me is, as in my former life, Desmond, I was a social worker, and I have my master's in social work, and I worked with kids with severe mental health. I worked with a ton of kids with autism. And RFK Jr. suggested that they'll never pay taxes, people with autism, that they will never use the bathroom by themselves, has literally no understanding of what autism is, and then equated it to environmental issues and issues with, food, etc. When now what they're realizing through years and years of study is we're able to, one, diagnose it earlier. So that's why there's this perception that more people are being diagnosed on the spectrum. And two, they're finding that it has actually a lot of genetic components to it as to whom is getting autism. Now, that's not negating the fact that we, of course, need to have clean air and clean water. We, of course, need to have a healthy food supply that supports, and nurtures our growth as individuals. But to put all of the onus on that and to negate all of the things that we know from scientific research is just another in the multi-long list of reasons why this man isn't fit to run a school board meeting, let alone the Department of Health and Human Services. People are agreeing with me, which is nice. Thank you. And yes, Joseph Tucker, autism is complicated. I agree. And yes, the idea that we're connecting autism to vaccines has been disproven over and over and over again. But Desmond, what did you think when you heard these horrific and disgusting things?
I think RFK Jr. has I didn't really know too much about him until the last couple of years, as this presidential run was taking off. So he feels like a person who is still stuck in the 1990s, when this information was first coming out. And then it's been, as you were saying, it's been disproven, it's been debunked time over time again. But I think he's able to kind of gin up a fear amongst the population, which is tied to something that is unfortunately present for its own different reasons, which is the distrust in the medical system, and so distrust in pharmaceuticals. And so there are good reasons about why people are upset with the healthcare system in this country. But he takes that anger and he warps it into a conspiracy theory, and then gets a bunch of people to think that autism is some disease that needs to be eradicated. And so it's a pervasive thing to do. It's a pervasive thing to take was a legitimate fear that people have with the healthcare system, and then kind of warp reality to turn it into a different conversation altogether. And now there are millions of people who are neurodivergent on some level who are now being told in different pockets of the country that there's something wrong with them. And how awful is that? I think that the kind of barriers that people already have to face in society, and now we're just putting an additional stigma on them. It really just disgusts me on so many different levels. And RFK, if you're going to be the head of the Department of Health and Human Services, then you should be aware of the science that is involved in the things you are speaking on. And he clearly is not.
No, you couldn't have said it better. And I will add this too. I work with a lot of disability justice organizations and community members in the city of Pittsburgh, where I'm based.
Yeah.
And I was on a panel a few weeks ago, and I was the ally to the community on the panel as part of it. And one of the young women that was on the panel, who is blind and has autism, she broke my heart when she basically said, what people like RFK Jr. are saying is that I don't deserve to have a life, that I don't have value just by being here, that I don't have a place in the world. This is a person, by the way, she's brilliant, and she started her own coffee company because no one would hire her. And now she hires all of these people living with disabilities. And so she has created a space for commerce in her community, for community, and a place for people with disabilities to work, because so many of them can't get jobs because of all of these stigmas. And so this idea that he is enhancing that rhetoric, and in my opinion, setting the stage to justify eugenics programs and extermination programs as we move forward. Let us not forget, during the Holocaust, the concentration camps were in Poland, not in Germany. Where are we shipping people right now? El Salvador. To do what? To die. So this is all connected. And I think we have to acknowledge the fact that RFK Jr. is setting himself up to be a part of a Nazi regime in a way that we really haven't experienced ever in this country. And I'll be damned if any of us stand around and let this happen. And this is why our feminism, going all the way back to the beginning, must be intersectional, right? Because we have to stand with all types of people. Feminism is for everyone, all genders, all people, and we all have to stand in solidarity and stand against people who would diminish and demean the value of human life based off of their productivity. You matter because you exist. You have intrinsic value because you happen to be a part of this miracle of this moment, and that's enough.
Yeah. And, I think the final thing that I would say on this moment is I know people who I've talked to online and in my real life who, they have a great affinity for RFK, or they liked him for whatever reason. I would just say this blatantly, like, his advocacy on behalf of environmental issues in the past, or maybe you heard him say something that you agree with involving maybe housing, for instance, like you cannot discount terrible things that people say and do because they happen to also say something that you agree with.
Right.
I would hope that people can just find a way to think of these things in two different tracks. Like, I can appreciate when someone says something about housing or the environment that I like, and also acknowledge that they are just a monster.
Listen, to that point, Sarah Palin and I actually agreed on something in the past week, and it was around this idea that Kristi Noem was saying everybody's going to need to just deal with getting their passports and all this to vote. And Sarah Palin was like, why do we got to get these real IDs? And you know what I say to that? Because I agreed with Sarah. A broken clock is right twice a day.
Yep.
It's still broken, okay?
Yeah.
Like, I don't suddenly become a stand for Sarah Palin because her and I both said that, real IDs are nonsense. Like, to your point, people become so tribal about this, and they take everything so personally, and they think that these are your friends. And it's like, no, this is why we've got to figure out what is our philosophy and our ideology that we stand in, that we're allowed to evolve, but that we believe as we move forward. Let's uplift ideas and not people.
Well, uplifting ideas, something that we're going to continue to do as time goes on every Friday. Hopefully, kind of keep that schedule. We'll see.
I like it.
As of right now, it's every Friday. Natalie, these lives are being posted. Obviously we're on Substack right now. I've been posting the videos to YouTube afterwards. It's also been posting to my Substack followers for those who can't make the live. For people who aren't familiar with you, maybe that's their first time seeing you, where can they find you else besides on Substack?
Yeah, I am, always getting into good trouble here on Substack, and also on TikTok and Instagram. You can find me at Natalie Bencivenga. And I've also been playing around with Threads too. So lots of spaces. And I just want to give a shout out to Sarah Z, Politos, Joseph Tucker. We had so many people giving so many great comments, independent voter. So thank you guys for being a part of this. And Desmond, as always, I appreciate you so much. And I appreciate being in conversation with you.
Yeah. Natalie is an award-winning journalist. If you're not following her already, you can fix that problem now by going and following her. We're going to be doing this more in the future, so if you're not already, go ahead and please subscribe. I'm also going to be having some other conversations with other people as well. So we're hoping to have this, live chat thing, live stream thing be more of a consistent thing. So look forward to seeing us on Fridays.
Sounds good. Bye, everybody. Thank you.
All right. We'll see ya.